again. So we are going to dive in head first into Sean's phenomenal presentation. I'm really excited for everyone to listen into this one, and then we'll end with a few updates on our end of what's going on at Livable Buckhead for the year, and talk a little bit about construction that's happening in Buckhead. So, Sean,
All right.
I'll hand it over to you.
Is it just spacebar?
Or the arrow. Yep.
Or the arrow?
Either one, I think.
Is that an arrow? Oh, here we go. All right, so I come from a household with 3 Gen Zers, so if my personal experiences weigh into this presentation, you'll know where it's coming from, frustrations. But yeah, so we wanted to introduce you into the Gen Z population as they become a bigger and bigger part of our workforce. But the challenge for all the HR professionals, benefit professionals now, of course, is balancing 4 different generations at your workplace. So it's like, what's coming, but what are we all already having? So let's not forget about them to put our mindset on the future, right? So we did give some context to the different generations. 4 generations in one workplace that we'll talk about, and then focus a little bit more on defining Gen Z in the evolving workplace. We're all coming out of a crazy, tumultuous time, starting with COVID, economic factors. So our workplace is evolving to try to address the needs of these 4 generations. And then, of course, the secret sauce, considerations for attracting and retaining the Gen Z-ers as we come in here. So the slides will be available. I think we're going to email these out probably. We put a lot of additional information in the appendix as well. But here's the landscape, and I was talking to some of the group. The boomer, they keep moving the age. I keep getting closer and closer to that. They need to stop, right? But I like the motivated by column here to give you an idea of, it used to be, I get a job, I'm committed, they're hiring me for a reason, that's what I'm going to be there for, to more on the other end of the Gen Z, it's like, I'll help you, but how can you help me? Really that mentality going back. Not saying one's better or worse as far as the individual, a little more challenging for the employer to try to balance that as well. Something else that sticks out to all of us is the percent population of the workforce, right? So most of our workforce now is comprised of the X's and the Y's. You're going to see the boomers start to become a smaller number and be replaced with the Gen Zers, obviously, as that rolls through, but they're already balanced with the baby boom population here, all right? Putting down to the generational mindsets, this is what I was referring to before. It's like going into a profession, what are the different generations looking at? So boomers live to work. If you work hard, you'll go fine. Climb that corporate ladder. Give, give, give. Gen X, work-life balance. Millennials, work first, then live. Those are the priorities there. And then it becomes an amalgamation of everything as we look at Gen Z. So work to live, and this is very important, and it will be a recurring theme, is find purpose in your work, find purpose in your employer, find a place, again, where your values align with your employers, the need for transparency. And as we said before, that segmentation will become a bigger and bigger part of the global workforce. So it's not only obviously a US consideration, but if you have global reach, it's happening all over. It tends to do that. So this is what we're looking at with Gen Z, and y'all know this. The kids are born literally with an iPad in their hands, right? They're very technology friendly. It's innate, it's second nature to them. So whatever you're doing as far as the way you conduct business or the way you communicate, just remember, this is the avenue to reach the Gen Z population. Further, and we understand why, is mental health is a priority. Whether it's parenting, whether it's the times they've lived in or whatever, they're more open to discussing their feelings, for lack of a better word. All right, so it's, this is how I'm feeling. Where do I go? I need help. I'm willing to talk to somebody. How do I access these resources? And then again, the social activists, right? You can barely blame them because, one, everybody spent a lot of time at home during COVID-19, right? So people were going out. They have this wonderful thing called the internet. Do y'all remember, oh God, I'm going to date myself, in the mid-1990s when email was a new thing and we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have all this access, there was no social media, we didn't have all this 24/7 access to information. So of course, when you're in a situation where you're only at home, you're on your own, what else are they going to do, right? They're going to game, of course, at least the boys, I guess the girls game too, but they're going to go searching. We've just come out of a very prosperous run economically. So this is the first time we've really seen a heavy amount of layoffs, a heavy amount of inflation. Interest rates are on the rise. Now all of a sudden things are becoming unaffordable. That, live-work balance, that's kind of shifting a little bit because of the economics of the time. And then of course, what we've seen with social unrest. It's very scary. It's a very scary world that we live in right now, and just their ability to process this. The generation remembers 11 to 26. So the ability to process this, just the young minds getting their arms around it, can be somewhat challenging as well. Something else that I've learned, and as y'all are hiring, is it's a very inclusive group, but they also share. Like nothing is sacred. Like you cut a deal with one employee, give them a little bit more than the other, they're going to talk. They're going to find out. So as we consider job responsibilities and even compensation, that's something that we have to consider that we used to not. That used to be private. That used to be your own. Now it's like all on the table, right? It's like, I need to go ask for a raise. So this is where we're talking about. So where do they want to work? Obviously, a place, regardless of industry, they expect the ability to be connected digitally, right? So again, if you're communicating, if they're doing their work, part of this is not even just flexibility in work hours. It's work from anywhere. Hey, as long as I'm dialed in, as long as I'm tuned in, why does it matter if I'm in the office or if I'm working remotely? And if I'm working remotely, maybe I'm not sitting in my apartment. I could be in the beach in the Gulf Coast or something, right? Why does that matter to you? So that idea. Again, pay equity and flexibility. Not to say that this population or this generation doesn't want to climb the corporate ladder, but they certainly want to be recognized more. Okay, they want to, if they're doing their work, they're doing a good job, they want that feedback. They want to be able to collaborate. They want to be able to, have conversation and rub elbows with the C-suite. Give their opinion, give their thoughts, and be heard. Okay, so that's different. Very bold, and very comfortable talking to adults for the most part. Well, let me back that up. Very comfortable interacting with adults. One of the challenges is the interpersonal communication, because everything's been Zoom, it's been Teams, it's been email communication, instant messaging, whatever. We've turned the interpersonal communication to something very antiseptic, if you will, right? It's just very, not personal, and that takes something away from the conversation. So here's the recruiting challenge. All right, as y'all are going, and this is, agree with it, throw it up. This is one of the more recent surveys that I found that I was looking at, and it's amazing the amount of research around this topic of Gen Z. It's out there. It was hard just getting it all into a 20-minute presentation. But here's a survey from hiring managers. Okay, so it's nearly 1 out of 3 managers report having a preference for hiring older workers over Gen Z. Okay, so they know what they're getting. And of course they do. Gen Z, the 3 years into the workforce for the most part, right? If it tops out at 26, so we got 23, 24, 25. And then we have training and onboarding. So how well do you get to know somebody? But they're saying the top reasons Gen Z did not get the job is the entitled attitude. Okay? It's probably part parenting. I know I'm guilty, right? They pretty much get a lot and work for a little. So they're bringing that out. But 41% of respondents claim they were acted too entitled, and go to the bottom, unrealistic expectation, compensation expectation. Okay? They didn't want to work and gain and exceed that way. They wanted it immediately. Poor communication. I think that goes back to the lack of interaction, personal communication. They were pulled out of school. They were pulled out of their classes, any social events. Kids missed proms. They missed sorority and fraternity socials. They missed working together as a team collaboratively in the libraries. So of course the intersocial communication is going to be impacted by that. And then what's really unsurprising is, or surprising to me, was the unpreparedness. Walking into an interview, they said the respondents were unprepared for the interview overall. I don't know if that stretches back to the entitlement. I'll get the job. I put in my application, hire me. Or where that comes from. So maybe lack of coaching, maybe, again, lack of that ability to interact with school counselors or somebody that's prepping you for that next position in your career. So do these look familiar, at least 1 out of the 4, 2 out of the 4, as you've kind of attracted these? Yes?
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
it's really interesting, especially the unrealistic comp expectations.
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from? Like because it is pretty common,
Yeah.
For very entry level to come in and say, well, I expect to make X amount. And you're like, this is not quite. Like,
Yeah.
where does that?
I think a lot of it comes from, the parenting. And again, I'm guilty. They grow up with, a flat screen in their bedroom and 2 different gaming systems. And this is hitting close to home because this is what I do. And then, they got a car. They're not dependent upon, rides, figuring all that stuff out. I'm sorry,
I also
please.
think it comes from they can see their friends on social media making all this money from affiliate marketing, and so they're like, well, I can make this amount of money doing this, so if I go and apply for this job, I want this amount.
Right.
I've experienced that for sure
And
in our hiring.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And what's real? What's real out there? So they get this unrealistic expectation for compensation because they're relying on social media to be truthful. That's where they're getting their information. That's where they're getting their facts. That's dangerous, right? So could be somebody multi-level marketing. Lure them in. Come on in. You got to do this.
And is it even over just higher because of cost of living standards now?
Yeah.
Or is it even higher they're asking than just what maybe be a typical
Starting salary.
starting salary?
I think it's twofold. I think, some of our businesses, I know ours especially, probably did need to look at our comp. We've been paying the same amount for X amount of years, and so that's fair to say that maybe we do need to be a little bit more competitive. But I think some of the numbers that I've heard back were well, that's twice as much as what I was.
Yeah.
I would say, okay, if job X pays $15 an hour and they're asking for 17, that's probably fair, right? And if job X pays 15 and they're asking for 30,
Right.
There's a disconnect that I'm just kind of curious as to how do we get past that, or maybe maybe our entry levels aren't as entry level as we thought.
Another thing I would say is COVID didn't do employers any favors because there was a talent shortage in a lot of industries, and so with all of that demand for talent, and people were able to command crazy salaries in our industry, in particular professional services, they would come to us straight out of college expecting things that I was paying people who have 10, 15 years of experience, but I had to pay that in order to get them to work for us.
Yeah.
And so now we're kind of right-sizing salaries back down, but the last 3 years we've paid exorbitant amounts just to get entry-level people.
And how do you go down? right? That's the challenge. Once you go up, how do you go down unless you're replacing
Right.
somebody? And that's something I hadn't thought about. So let's think about this. Employers were incentivized by the government to keep workers. So it wasn't their money, right? It wasn't their money anymore. They just, turned in a receipt basically and got reimbursed. That's simplifying the process, obviously. But I think that did make it easier to pay people to stay and continue on.
I'm just seeing something, and I'm just putting this question out there. I find it interesting that one of the top reasons is poor communication, right? So if they don't get the job because of poor communication, does that speak to using pay, for example? If they're asking for X amount for a position, what's their desired salary, but yet they're not getting the position due to poor communication. I wonder, does that speak to, are they just coming in saying, I want 100,000 or 200,000, something outrageous, and not putting the research behind it, saying, this particular position pays this much, so that's why I want this? Or is it just, are they saying, I want, and that's it?
Well, I think some of the pay transparency laws that are in place in like California and New York, some of these places with higher cost of living, people then expect that to be the comp for the same role in the world, and they are using that as their research, as their data point. It's not necessarily applicable to where they are in their company, because that also could be a company of a completely different size and stage. But they see something that's like, well, this company's paying $100,000 for this job, so why won't you pay me to do that here?
Well, I think that also goes back to the sharing, right? When they're transparent, you might have an A candidate that you're willing to pay because they're an all-star and they're going to be an all-star. You're paying above, advertised prices. Then the next person comes in and it's like, yeah, but they're talking. So then you got that compensation discrepancy that, somebody's going to be unhappy, and the person that got the job that's getting paid more might feel bad for the other people and feel like it's not fair. So it's kind of the no good deed goes unpunished kind of deal, right? But yeah, that's a challenge, and I know everybody in the room has experienced these, and it's great conversation. But that is the goal. When you find somebody that is the exception to the rule, we do break the parameters because we feel like they're going to be worth the investment. It'll pay off, right? And then you hope you keep them. There's the risk, right? You're like,
And
oh no.
they were actually worth it.
Yeah, and they were actually worth it. Well, hey, across the generations, we know that candidates gave their best sales job at the interview, right? That's where they did their best work.
Right.
What? Yeah. Who's your doppelganger that came in here and sold me on this? Yeah. So here's what we see as the Gen Z value benefits, and these are part of the standard trend deck that we use with our clients when we're going through their clinical analysis or anything else. It's considerations on your benefits package. Social awareness. Okay, it's understanding where you stand as a organization. What are your values? You can no longer say, look, that is something that is private, right? And to each their own, and we're going to be Switzerland on this. Now these employees want to understand what your values are, what your social values are as far as an organization. And once you say that, are you walking the talk? Show me what you're doing to support our position on this. Mental health. 61% would consider changing jobs for better mental health benefits. Wow. Okay. High utilization, not necessarily high cost. Okay, so let's keep that in place. That's almost an easy one. That's almost low-hanging fruit. You know, when you think about, not that behavioral health, mental health can't be chronic, but think about the cost that your organizations dump into managing hypertensive, diabetes, you know, people with metabolic syndrome, those things, year after year, right? So this is people seeking to have a better state. They become more productive. They're more inclined to be tied to the organization. 45% report work-related burnout. And admittedly, I giggled when I read a little bit. It's like, they've been in the workforce for 3 years. Are you kidding me? You know, so, you know, my opinions aside, it's like, wow, holy cow. But I still think it goes back to all the stressors that built up to this, that they've been exposed to in a very short period of time. 5 years, right? 4 years. A lot happens in one time. Financial stability. So that's another one. It's like, you know, they want money, but they're also worried about money. So what are we doing to coach them? Is part of our benefits package and the resources that we're providing to them, providing this level of support. So whether it's, you know, whoever we're using for our 401k, do they have the opportunity outside of a bot that says, you know, this is where your investments need to be, teaching about personal finances, right? And understanding that if you make, I don't know, $75,000 a year, it's going to be tough for you to afford a $1,500 a month rent payment. We'd think the math was easy, but they lack that and need that kind of support to show it. So again, this is great. I hate to read from the slides, but I'm going to anyway. 77% say it's vital to work for a company whose values align with their own. All right. So again, we see this coming up more and more. I know Marsh is very much, weekly at least, reinforcing our values. You know, whether it's regarding Israel or you know, our support of other domestic social movements. You know, it's very well thought out in the strategies, and they're saying this is where we do. We'll stop doing business in countries where, you know, their values don't align with ours. So that's a big move. So I feel good about my organization, because if they're going to feed it to us that much, they are walking the talk on that. And then the fact that the money stressors and the behavioral health stressors that are involved, you know, again, that's low cost, high return, incorporating into your benefits package if it's not already there. And how do we communicate it? If it is there, are we communicating it appropriately with this group? Are we sending push notifications? Do we have an app? Do we have the access? Are we reinforcing it through those mediums? Okay, so the digital platforms and everything, the targeted solutions for mental health is one that I want to focus on real quick here. So we're very, very, very data driven. So our recommendations to our clients come out of the data that we see coming from their specific population. So it is, for the most part, medical and pharmacy data. Through this information, we get all this information into a data dump. And for this, I look to see, within our experience, are we seeing Generation Z access behavioral health as much as the surveys are telling us, right? Surveys are subjective. This is very objective data. So we have over 1.2 million claims in this data warehouse, representing over 155,000 lives, and you could see the trajectory on the mental health claims. So this is Gen Z members, so this does include kids, and remember, this is big. This does affect your experience, which affects your risk, which affects your cost. So we see the Gen Z members with an ever-increasing utilization on behavioral health. So we say, okay, that's great. Well, haven't those issues always, well, we don't say that's great, but we say, so these issues have always kind of been around, you know, why are they more prevalent now? I found this really interesting because we know the ADHD has always been around. As long as, you know, been around. I remember kids having ADHD, and bouncing off the walls and everything before the really good meds were out. But we see those lines and those costs are relatively low. Where we're starting to see the real big upticks is on the anxiety and the depression. Okay, that's concerning. That's concerning to me as a father of 3 individuals that fit into this generation, but also just as, looking at the healthcare system that we have in the United States and saying, is it good enough? And whether it's Cigna, Aetna, United, Anthem, are they really focused on helping us solve this problem, or do we need to do more? Do we need to look at, specialty vendors to address this? And again, are we communicating this effectively?
Have you come across any data that speaks to all of those have been somewhat destigmatized in the last several years on the last chart you showed? Do you think that has any weighting?
Well, I think a lot to do. Yeah, and great segue. I'm going to introduce Laura Moore real quick. Laura and I we're doing a clinical meeting with one of our clients, and she's our healthcare management consultant. So this is where she lives and breathes. So if anybody wanted a deeper conversation, after this, I encourage you to talk to Laura where this goes. I think so. I think for everything. Again, so I did take a broader look at this, and I think it might even be in the appendix. It's up across all generations. Everybody's, reaching out, searching, whatever you want to see, but it's mostly prevalent among the Gen Zs. I mean, they stick out. And you can see, again, as utilization goes up, of course cost goes up, right? So we looked at this, and we looked at the number of, not just utilization, but we tried to normalize it on a per employee per year basis. So cost is going up. So we have more people using, and the cost for these services is going up. And of course, you've probably heard this at your own reviews, there's a lack of providers. There's a lack of psychologists. It's a wait to get in to see somebody. So what's our solution there, right? And this is where we look to these really, and this is great for the Gen Zers because they're through an app. They're virtual visits, virtual communication, but Headspace, Talkspace, Happify, BetterHealth. There's a bunch of different ones. I'm not endorsing any of these, but it's very dependent upon your specific needs as to how these can complement what you're already doing. Okay? So then, and I think I'm probably over time, but I think we're getting close to wrapping up. So here's the preferred benefits. And of course, this is all the survey data that we accumulate across our book of business, and then complement it with other resources. But Gen Z, so what do they want? Comprehensive healthcare plans, of course, right? So that's got to be first. Holistic health and well-being benefits, particularly mental health. So this is going beyond medical. It's whole person health, right? So it's your medical well-being, it's your behavioral or mental well-being, and don't forget the third piece, the financial well-being. So that's your holistic approach to your benefits offering to these individuals. You're checking all the boxes. And then, of course, the ever-popular tuition reimbursement. Okay. Does anybody have a solution for tuition reimbursement? That's a tough one, isn't it? Yeah. Mom, Dad, yeah, 529s. No, but I mean, even offering the opportunity for your employees to start 529s isn't a horrible, idea. Anything that can be simplified through payroll deduction is always good. Flexible scheduling, that's tough. We're starting to see the market turn back to real return to work. Like, we want you back in the office. We are better together. We need you as part of the team. You're missing out. You're missing on your own growth by not being present. Okay, so whether that answer is, 2 days a week, 3, 4, 7, everybody wants to get away from, by the way, the trend is also a 4-day work week now, right? I don't want to come in, but I only want to work 4 days. So that's a tough one. So remote work benefits, and really, what I keep seeing is work from anywhere. That's the benefit that they're looking for. So I love this quote, because this is important to keep in mind. And of course, as employers, as career people, this is what we're looking for, right? So I think while there's some challenges, you're probably aligned with this. People who live their purpose at work are more productive than people who don't. It's not just a job, right? So we're all in it together. They're also healthier, more resilient, and more likely to stay at the company. So they're more productive. They give more. Absenteeism is better. Presenteeism. They're at work and they're actually doing their job. They're focused. That improves. So productivity improves. Okay. Moreover, when employees feel that their purpose is aligned with the organization's purpose, the benefits expand to include stronger employee engagement, highlighted loyalty, and a greater willingness to recommend the company to others. Okay? It's a heavy lift. It is. It's not going to be cured overnight, right? You take small bites and you continue to evolve. So there's a lot of information in this appendix. This is a resource that we're providing to the group here. It's simple. You hit a link. It'll take you to basically a repository of all things related to well-being. I think we call them the 4 pillars of health. Again, yeah, Laura can give you an explanation. But basically, it's focused on off-the-shelf communications and strategies to help you accomplish all these different things we talked about. Okay, and the link will be in the presentation deck. All right, so here's the dimension of well-being playbooks that's also available on there. Again, mental health well-being, social well-being playbooks are all within that repository. So we hope you access it. It's free, so it's there, and share it with your colleagues as well. The other thing that we do at Marsh, which I read a lot about, I don't see a lot about it, is what we call employee resource groups, or we call them colleague resource groups. This is where somebody has an idea, they want to form a club, there's parameters to do it, and they engage their colleagues to participate. So this doesn't have management oversight or anything like that. It's just a safe place for like-minded people to come together, share their thoughts. Maybe they do charity events or whatever compels the group to give back. So the ones that we do or grow, Minds That Matter, Parents Group, Spectrum. We also have a veterans group and a lot of others. So the idea is that you empower the employee to take the lead on these. We could give you sample documents as what they're committing to, and you have everybody commit to it as well. Whatever resources you make available, meeting rooms, before hours, after hours space, if you can get people to come in, maybe just a Teams room you set up for them. But all those resources are available if anybody's interested in starting these. Is anybody doing employee resource groups now? Yeah. And you mind sharing your experiences?
So we've got a pretty strong network of various employee resource groups across the globe that they are race-based, they are gender-based, they are religion-based. We have a parents group, we've got our Pride group, which is our LGBTQ+ group. We also have we call it our neurodiversity group, which is our mental health and well-being. And what we do that kind of the 2 key things is each group gets to plan events throughout the year, and we give each group a small budget of like, here's the money you can use for those events. They bring in speakers, external speakers. They also plan safe spaces, so when those kind of larger social issues crop up, we say, you know what, have a safe space. So like for when George Floyd, when his murder happened, we had our Black employee group that called Safe Spaces for individuals that both identify as part of that group and also allies to that group to kind of process what was going on. And for us as a firm, we don't make statements of support or whatnot about social issues. So like we stay quiet, but we allow our employee resource groups internally to guide our messaging. So We have 1,200 employees.
Okay.
We have about 8 different employee resource groups.
We have, same here, you said yours 12 years?
I'm sorry?
How long have yours been in existence?
Oh, I don't know how long. I would say at least 10.
Yeah.
years when I'm aware of that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Ours have only been in existence for 3 years now. And we have 8 categories. We just decided when we built it out to do 8 categories, to your point, pride, multicultural. We have the parents group, veterans group, and women's group. And then of course 3 others. But in any case, we have 8 categories, but we only have at the present 5 groups currently active. We started within our corporate center, and we're trying to move outward to operations, but that's where our challenge is. Because of course, our operations and corporate, they're frontline employees. They're not in front of a computer like our corporate employees, so we have to speak a different language. But that's one of our challenges. But the employee resource groups, we make sure that they have enough funding that they can create an impact, whatever impact they want to make. Of course, within parameters, but we try to stay out of, but we give opportunities in terms of a organizational calendar of what they can host if they want to. And it works. It totally works. It gives everyone a voice.
We
Yeah.
also have for our groups, like if there's a month or a time of year associated with that group, for our company All Hands, we'll have the leaders of that ERG host that week. So another way to they'll host for that entire month. So different members of the ERG have an opportunity to do it, and they'll kind of also take on the ownership of any events and stuff that are happening, and also their moments of those events that come to the All Hands too.
And do you all
Getting
spotlight?
back to kind of the
Oh.
attraction and retention of your Gen Z, we include some of the leaders of our ERGs in the recruitment process, especially with our kind of younger recruits, to say, hey, we want you to meet with these groups so you can learn more about our culture and how we think about social issues and whatnot, because a consulting firm doesn't really have a purpose other than clients and money, right? So to have this internally gives people that sense of purpose of who we are as people, just because our firms
Yeah.
not necessarily.
I think it's wonderful to
require that.
showcase too. So whether it's on the landing page of your internet site or intranet site, or just highlighting whatever event the month is, and you have a resource group, to remind people that it's out there and you can join. And 10 years is fantastic. How long have ours been? We've been doing this 5, 6, or our colleague resource group. Yeah, 5, 6 years. Yeah. And they grow fast too. But they're not it's not a rubber stamp. The employee has to come up with a well-defined plan, commitment, and then get approval, and if there's any funding involved as well, or what they would expect from the organization. So, well, I ate up everybody's time, but thank you for letting me speak. And
Thank you so much, Sean.